My husband swapped my dermatologist-prescribed skincare with drugstore products without my knowledge, causing severe breakouts, and watched me cry every night knowing he was the cause. So I replaced his gym protein powder with toddler formula, and he got violent when I told him what I did. About 2 years ago, my 32F husband Tobias, 35M, started listening to these podcasts during his commute. I did not pay much attention at first. He would mention things he heard, like how men need to reclaim their masculinity or how modern society feminizes men. I brushed it off as just something he was interested in at the moment. But over the following months, his behavior changed. He started making comments about women in general, about how they waste money on useless things, about how emotional they are compared to men. When I pointed out that these were generalizations, he would accuse me of being too sensitive. I have dealt with severe acne since I was 14. My face would break out in painful cysts that left scars. Over the years, I tried everything from drugstore products to home remedies. Nothing worked until I finally saw a dermatologist when I was 25. The doctor put me on a specific routine that included prescription creams, a gentle cleanser, and a medicated moisturizer. The products were expensive. A single tube of the prescription cream cost over $100 and lasted about 6 weeks. But they worked. For the first time in my adult life, my skin cleared up. I still had some scarring, but the constant breakouts stopped. Tobias knew all of this. He was there when I cried after particularly bad breakouts before finding the right treatment. He saw the medical bills and never complained about the cost. But around 6 months ago, he started making remarks. He would say things like how the beauty industry preys on women's insecurities or how most skincare products are just overpriced water. I told him my products were prescribed by a doctor, not bought because of an advertisement, but he would just shrug. In early September, I started noticing changes in my skin. At first, it was just a few small bumps on my forehead. I thought maybe I was stressed from work. Then more appeared on my cheeks. Within a week, my entire face was covered in painful, inflamed acne. The kind that hurts to touch. The kind that makes it hard to sleep because any contact with the pillow feels like pressing on an open wound. I went back to my dermatologist, who was confused. She asked if I had changed anything in my routine. I told her no, I was using the same products as always. The breakout got worse. My face was red and swollen. Some of the cysts were so large they felt like marbles under my skin. I could not wear makeup to cover them because anything I applied made the burning worse. I started working from home because I did not want anyone at the office to see me. At night, I would try to sleep sitting up because laying down made the pressure on my face unbearable. I cried a lot during that week. Not just because of how I looked, but because of the physical pain. Tobias was supportive during this time, or so I thought. He would sit with me on the couch while I cried. He would rub my back and tell me it would get better. He even offered to pick up food so I would not have to go out. I was grateful for his presence. On the 8th day of the breakout, Tobias's sister Natalie, 29F, sent me a text asking if I was okay. I told her I was dealing with a skin issue but would be fine. She did not respond right away. Then, about an hour later, she called me. She sounded hesitant. She asked if Tobias had done anything strange recently. I told her no, and asked why she was asking. She said she needed to show me something and asked if she could come over. I said yes. Natalie arrived with her laptop. She sat down next to me and opened a group chat between Tobias and his younger brother Owen, 26M. Owen is married to a woman named Rachel. The messages were from 2 weeks earlier, right before my skin started breaking out. I read through them slowly. Tobias had written about how he wanted to prove that expensive skincare products were a scam. He said he was going to replace my prescription creams with cheap alternatives from the drugstore and see if I noticed a difference. Owen responded asking if that was a good idea since my products were prescribed. Tobias said it did not matter, that all face creams were basically the same, and that I was wasting money because of marketing. He also wrote that I was being dramatic about my acne and that it was not as serious as I made it seem. He used the phrase that I was acting like a baby over a few pimples. There were more messages. Tobias described how he had carefully emptied my prescription tubes and bottles and refilled them with products he bought at a pharmacy for under $20 total. He wrote about how I had no idea and was still applying them like they were the real thing. Owen seemed uncomfortable with the plan and said Tobias should just talk to me instead. Tobias responded that talking would not prove his point, and that I needed to see for myself that I was overreacting about skincare. Then came the messages from the week of my breakout. Tobias wrote about how I was crying every night and how he had to comfort me. He described it like it was funny. He said I was having tantrums over my face and that it was proving his point about women being too emotional. Owen stopped responding after that. But then Tobias sent another message. He told Owen that he should try the same thing with Rachel, who also used expensive skincare products. He said Owen could prove the same point and save money. Owen replied with a single word. He wrote no. Tobias called him whipped and said he was letting Rachel control him. Natalie found out because Rachel had shown the messages to her during a family gathering. Rachel was furious with Owen for not immediately shutting down Tobias's suggestion. Natalie decided I needed to know. I sat there staring at the screen. I read the messages 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Tobias had deliberately caused my breakout. He had watched me in pain for over a week, held me while I cried, and knew the entire time that he was the reason it was happening. I asked Natalie if she was sure the messages were real. She showed me the timestamps and the profile pictures. It was definitely Tobias's account. I told her I needed some time alone. She hugged me and left. When Tobias came home from work that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my phone in front of me. Natalie had sent me screenshots of the conversation. He walked in, saw my face, and asked if the breakout was getting any better. I did not say anything. I just turned my phone around so he could see the screen. His expression changed immediately. He glanced at the phone, then at me, then back at the phone. He asked where I got those messages. I told him that did not matter. I asked him if what I was reading was true. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said yes, but that I was blowing it out of proportion. I asked him how replacing my prescription medication with random drugstore products could be considered anything other than what it was. He said medication was a strong word, that they were just creams. He said he wanted to prove a point about how much money I was wasting. I asked him if he understood that my face was covered in open sores because of what he did. He said I was being dramatic, that acne was not that serious, and that I was acting like he had poisoned me. I stood up and walked out of the kitchen. He followed me, asking where I was going. I went to the guest bedroom and locked the door. He knocked and said we needed to talk about this like adults. I did not respond. He knocked a few more times, then stopped. I heard him go back downstairs. I stayed in the guest bedroom that night. I did not sleep. I kept thinking about how he had held me while I cried, knowing he had caused it. I thought about how he had written about my pain like it was entertaining. I thought about the fact that he had encouraged Owen to do the same thing to Rachel. The next morning, Tobias knocked on the door again. He said he was sorry I was upset, but that I needed to understand his perspective. He said the beauty industry was exploiting women and that he was trying to help me see that. I opened the door and asked him if he would have done the same thing to himself. If he would have replaced his own products with cheaper alternatives to prove a point. He did not answer. I told him I was staying in the guest bedroom until I figured out what to do next. He said I was overreacting and that we could work through this. Then he left for work. I went back to my dermatologist that day. I brought the products Tobias had swapped in. She was horrified. She said the ingredients in the cheap products were completely wrong for my skin type and could have made the scarring permanent. She prescribed antibiotics to help with the infection and told me it would take weeks for my skin to fully recover. I have been in the guest bedroom for 3 days now. Tobias keeps trying to talk to me, but I have nothing to say to him. He has started saying that I am punishing him over a mistake. He does not see what he did as wrong. He sees it as an experiment that did not go the way he planned. I do not know what I am supposed to do from here. Update 1: I did not expect the response to my original post. I read through the comments and a lot of people told me to leave. Some people said I should get revenge. One person suggested I do to Tobias what he did to me. I thought about that suggestion for a few days. Tobias had still not apologized. He kept insisting that I was overreacting and that his intentions were good. He said he was trying to save us money. He said I was being vindictive by staying in the guest bedroom. He started complaining to his parents about how I was freezing him out over something small. My skin was slowly healing, but the dermatologist warned me that some of the scarring might be permanent. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw what Tobias had done. And he still did not think it was a big deal. So I decided to do something. Tobias is very particular about his fitness routine. He goes to the gym 5 days a week. He has protein shakes every morning made with this specific powder he orders online. The powder is expensive, around $70 for a container that lasts a month. He is meticulous about his diet and his workout schedule. He tracks his calories and his macros and weighs himself every morning. I went to a store and bought a container of toddler nutritional formula. The kind that is designed to help underweight children gain weight. It was high in calories and fat. The powder looked almost identical to his protein powder. Same color, same texture, almost the same smell. I emptied his protein powder container and replaced it with the toddler formula. Then I threw away the original powder. I did this on a Sunday night while he was asleep. Tobias did not notice. He made his shake every morning like usual. He went to the gym like usual. But after about a week and a half, he started complaining that his pants felt tighter. He checked the scale and he had gained 4 pounds. He was confused because he said he had not changed anything about his routine. He started going to the gym 6 days a week instead of 5. He added extra cardio. But he kept gaining weight. By the 3rd week, he had gained almost 9 pounds. He was furious. He kept saying he did not understand what was happening. He checked his calorie tracking app over and over. He accused me of sabotaging his meal prep, which I had not touched. I told him maybe his metabolism was changing. He said that did not make sense. I watched him get more and more frustrated. He started skipping meals to try to compensate. He doubled his cardio sessions. He was at the gym for 2 hours every morning before work. But the weight kept coming on. His clothes were tight. His face looked fuller. He was miserable. On the 21st day, He came home from the gym and went straight to the bathroom scale. He stood there staring at the number. Then he punched the wall. He came into the kitchen where I was making coffee and said he was going to see a doctor because something was clearly wrong with his body. He said he was eating less than ever and working out more than ever and still gaining weight. I put my coffee down and told him he did not need to see a doctor. He asked what I meant. I told him I had replaced his protein powder with toddler formula 3 weeks ago. I said every shake he made was adding about 400 extra calories and twice the fat he thought he was consuming. He stared at me. He asked if I was serious. I said yes. I told him I wanted him to understand what it felt like to have someone mess with something important to him without his knowledge. I said I wanted him to see how it felt to have someone watch him suffer and pretend to be supportive while knowing they caused it. Tobias exploded. He started yelling that what I did was insane. He said I had poisoned him. He said I had ruined months of work at the gym. He called me vindictive and cruel. He said replacing skincare products and replacing food were not the same thing. I asked him why. He did not have an answer. He just kept yelling. He picked up one of the kitchen chairs and threw it. It hit the wall and left a dent. He called me a name I will not repeat. Then he called me worthless. He said I was a spiteful person and that he should have never married me. He grabbed his keys and left. He did not come home that night. He sent me a series of texts. He said I had betrayed his trust. He said what I did was abusive. He said he wanted a divorce. He said I was going to regret what I did. He called me more names in those texts. He said I was crazy and that everyone would see me for what I really was. I did not respond to any of the messages. I just saved them. The next day, Tobias's mother Sandra called me. She was furious. She said Tobias had told her everything and that she could not believe I would do something so horrible to him. She said I had always seemed like a reasonable person but that I clearly had issues. She said Tobias was at their house and that I needed to apologize and fix this. I told Sandra she should ask Tobias why I did what I did. She said it did not matter why, that what I did was unacceptable. I told her to ask Tobias about my skincare products. She said she did not know what I was talking about. I said that was exactly the problem and hung up. Tobias stayed at his parents' house for 4 days. On the 5th day, Natalie called me. She said she had talked to Tobias and to their mother. She said Sandra was still defending Tobias but that their father was starting to ask questions. She said Owen had finally told their parents about the group chat messages. She said Sandra did not want to believe it but that their father was horrified. Tobias came back home a week after he left. He did not apologize. He said we needed to figure out how to move forward. I told him I had already contacted a lawyer. He asked if I was serious. I said yes. He said I was making a huge mistake. He said he would fight me on everything. I moved my documents and important belongings to my parents' house that weekend. Tobias barely spoke to me. When he did, it was to tell me how much I was going to regret this. I do not regret it. Update 2: the divorce process started moving faster than I expected. I filed the papers in early November. Tobias was served at his office because he refused to give me a forwarding address even though he was living back at our house. When the process server showed up at his workplace, Tobias apparently made a scene in the lobby. His boss had to ask him to step outside. 2 days after he was served, Tobias showed up at my office. I work on the 3rd floor of a building downtown. He somehow got past the security desk and came straight to my floor. My coworker saw him first and came to warn me. I went out to the reception area and he was standing there. He looked like he had not slept. He asked why I was doing this to him. I told him he needed to leave. He said we needed to talk. I said we could talk through our lawyers. He raised his voice and said I was being unreasonable. Security came and escorted him out. That afternoon, I left work early. I was tired and I just wanted to go home to my parents' house. I was walking through the parking garage to my car when I heard footsteps behind me. It was Tobias. He said he had been waiting for me. I asked him what he wanted. He said he wanted me to drop the divorce. He said I was ruining his life over nothing. I told him to leave me alone and turned to walk to my car. He grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but enough to stop me from walking. I pulled my arm away and told him not to touch me. He said I had humiliated him. He said I made him gain weight on purpose just so I would have an excuse to leave him. He said everything was my fault. I tried to walk past him again. He stepped in front of me. He said I was not going anywhere until we talked. I told him he needed to move. He did not. We stood there for what felt like a long time but was probably only 30 seconds. Then he put his hands on my throat. Not around it, but on it, with his thumbs pressing into the front of my neck. I could not breathe. I tried to push him away but he had been going to the gym 6 days a week for 2 years and I weighed about 150 pounds. I could not move him. Everything went quiet. I could see his face and he looked enraged. I thought about how this was the man I had been married to for 9 years and I did not recognize him anymore. Then someone yelled. A man from my office had been walking to his car and saw what was happening. He ran over and shoved Tobias. Tobias let go of me and I fell back against my car. I was coughing and trying to breathe. The man from my office stepped between me and Tobias. He told Tobias to back off. Tobias shoved him. Then Tobias punched him in the face. The man's nose started bleeding immediately. He stumbled back. Tobias looked at his own hand like he was surprised by what he had just done. Then he looked at me. I could not read his expression. He turned and ran. The man from my office called 911. The police came. An ambulance came. The man's nose was broken. I had red marks on my neck that were already starting to bruise. The police took my statement and the statement from the man who helped me. They took photos of my neck. They said they would pick Tobias up for assault. I went to the hospital to get checked out. The doctor said I was lucky. She said if Tobias had pressed harder or held on longer, I could have passed out or worse. She gave me paperwork for the police report and told me to take photos of the bruising over the next few days as it developed. I called my lawyer from the hospital. She said this changed everything. She said we could get an emergency restraining order and that the assault would factor heavily into the divorce proceedings. She asked if I was safe. I said I was staying with my parents and that Tobias did not know their new address since they had moved 6 months ago. The police arrested Tobias the next day at his office. He was charged with assault for what he did to me and for breaking the other man's nose. He spent one night in jail before his parents bailed him out. Sandra called me after that. She said I had destroyed her son's life. She said I should be ashamed of myself. I hung up. But 2 days later, Sandra called again. This time she sounded different. She said she needed to talk to me in person. I said no. She said please. Something in her voice made me agree to meet her at a coffee shop near my parents' house. Sandra showed up looking exhausted. She sat down across from me and did not say anything for a minute. Then she said she had found something. She said after Tobias was arrested, she and her husband went to our house to get some of his belongings. While they were there, she went through some boxes in the garage. She found papers from before Tobias and I got married. She showed me a police report from when Tobias was 22. He had been arrested for assault during an argument with a girlfriend. The charges were dropped because the girlfriend did not want to press charges. Sandra said she never knew about it. She said Tobias had never told her. She said she had always believed Tobias when he said I was the problem, but now she was not sure. I did not know what to say. Sandra started crying. She said she was sorry for how she had treated me. She said she had always defended Tobias because he was her son, but that she could not ignore what he had done to me. She said she would testify on my behalf if I needed her to. I thanked her and left. I did not know how to feel about her apology. She had called me horrible things just days before. The restraining order was approved. Tobias was not allowed to come within 500 feet of me or my workplace. My lawyer said the assault charges and his prior arrest record meant the divorce would likely be settled in my favor. I have not seen Tobias since the parking garage. His lawyer has been handling everything. Update 3: The divorce was finalized last week. It took longer than I wanted, but my lawyer said it went about as fast as these things usually go. Tobias did not fight me on most of the terms once his lawyer explained how the assault charges would play out if we went to trial. I got the house. I got most of our savings. Tobias has to pay a portion of my legal fees. He tried to contact me twice during the process. Once through a new phone number I did not recognize. He left a voicemail saying he still loved me and that we could fix this if I just gave him another chance. I saved the voicemail and sent it to my lawyer. The second time was through a letter mailed to my parents' address. I do not know how he found out where they lived. The letter said I had ruined his life and that I would never find anyone else who would put up with me. I gave that to my lawyer too. Both contacts were violations of the restraining order. His lawyer got him to stop after that. The man from my office who helped me in the parking garage had to have surgery on his nose. I visited him in the hospital and thanked him. He said he was glad he was there. We still work in the same building. Sometimes we have coffee in the break room. He does not ask about the divorce and I appreciate that. My skin has mostly healed. I still have some scarring that my dermatologist says might fade over time with treatment. Some of it will probably be permanent. I went back to my regular skincare routine. The prescription products are working again now that they are actually the prescription products. I moved back into the house in January. It felt strange at first. I kept expecting Tobias to walk through the door. But after a few weeks, it started to feel like mine. I changed the locks. I repainted the guest bedroom. I got rid of the chair Tobias had thrown and patched the hole in the wall. Natalie still calls me every few weeks to check in. She said Tobias is living with his parents again. She said he lost his job after the arrest because he had to take too many days off for court appearances and meetings with his lawyer. She said Sandra is trying to get him into some kind of counseling but that Tobias refuses. She said Owen does not talk to Tobias anymore. Neither does their father. I thought I would feel something more when the divorce was finalized. Relief or closure or something. But I mostly just felt tired. 9 years of marriage ended with a signature on a piece of paper. My lawyer asked if I wanted to pursue a civil suit for medical expenses related to the assault. I thought about it and decided no. I just want to be done with all of this. I want to move forward. I still have the screenshots Natalie sent me of the group chat messages. I look at them sometimes when I wonder if I overreacted or if I could have handled things differently. Then I remember the feeling of not being able to breathe in that parking garage and I stop wondering. People at work know what happened. Most of them do not bring it up. A few have asked if I am okay. I tell them I am fine. I do not know if that is true yet, but it feels like the right thing to say. My parents wanted me to stay with them longer, but I needed my own space. They live 20 minutes away and I see them most weekends. My mother keeps trying to set me up with sons of her friends. I told her I am not interested in dating. She says I will change my mind eventually. Maybe she is right. I am not afraid of Tobias anymore. The restraining order is still in effect for another year. I do not think he will try to contact me again. His lawyer made it very clear what would happen if he did. But even if the order expires and he tries to reach out, I do not think I would be afraid. I know what he is now. There is nothing he can say or do that would make me doubt that. The house feels empty sometimes. I got a cat last month. She sleeps on the bed and follows me from room to room. It helps. I went back and read my original post a few days ago. Someone in the comments said that what Tobias did with the skincare products told me everything I needed to know about who he was. They were right. I just did not want to see it at the time. I do not know what happens next. I go to work. I come home. I take care of my cat. I talk to my parents and to Natalie. I exist. That feels like enough for now. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. I left my corporate job for better work-life balance. My boyfriend enjoyed the benefits of my traditional values but always criticized me and said he wanted a power woman. I'm Sarah, 28F, and until last week, I was in a relationship with Jake, 32M, for almost 2 years. Everything fell apart after a conversation that left me questioning my entire identity and worth. I've spent the past few days staring at my apartment walls, replaying our last heated discussion. The silence is almost too much to bear. Jake said something to me with such contempt in his voice that I can't get it out of my head. But let me back up and explain how we got here. Jake and I met through mutual friends at a dinner party. He walked into the room with confidence that immediately caught my attention. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff began clearing tables around us. He was charismatic, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in my thoughts and opinions. Jake works as a financial consultant for a large firm. His job requires frequent travel, typically about 10 days each month. He earns well over $160,000 annually, and his career trajectory points upward. I left my corporate job in marketing 3 years ago. The 70-hour weeks and constant pressure were draining me. I now work remotely as a freelance content creator, making between $45,000 and $65,000 yearly. We live in Boston, where housing costs are astronomical. The average home here starts at around $800,000, and that doesn't get you much. Jake owns his condo downtown. I rent a small apartment in a less trendy neighborhood. From the beginning, I insisted on contributing financially to our relationship. We settled on a 65-35 split for shared expenses, with Jake covering the larger portion. This arrangement stemmed from my previous relationship with a wealthy man who constantly reminded me of what he paid for. That experience taught me to maintain financial independence. While Jake and I don't live together, I have a key to his place. Whenever he returns from business trips, I make sure his fridge is stocked and his apartment is clean. I cook meals that can be easily reheated when he's tired from travel. Early in our relationship, Jake mentioned how much this meant to him. He said it made him feel cared for in a way he hadn't experienced before. My approach to relationships aligns with more traditional values. I've always envisioned myself eventually focusing on building a strong family life. My career choices reflect this. I deliberately sought work that would allow flexibility when children came along. This doesn't mean I lack ambition or intelligence. I have a degree in economics, read extensively, and maintain various interests outside work. The first signs of trouble appeared about 6 months ago. Our physical relationship began to deteriorate. Jake stopped initiating intimacy. When we did connect physically, it felt mechanical and rushed. There was no foreplay, no affection. I tried subtle guidance, hoping to improve things without damaging his confidence. My efforts yielded no results. Last month, Jake suddenly wanted to discuss our physical relationship. He requested that I wear specific types of lingerie and take more initiative. Though I was already the one initiating most times, I enthusiastically embraced his suggestions. I purchased new lingerie and planned special evenings. Despite my efforts, nothing improved. Another issue developed alongside our intimacy problems. Jake's appearance changed significantly during our relationship. When we met, he was fit and took pride in his appearance. Over time, he gained considerable weight, particularly around his midsection. His tall frame and well-tailored suits concealed this in public, but in private, it became apparent. I maintained my commitment to fitness, regular gym sessions, yoga, and outdoor activities. Jake, however, developed habits that contradicted his earlier lifestyle. He began ordering dessert with every meal, drinking heavily several nights per week, and snacking constantly. When I gently mentioned health concerns, he dismissed them with excuses. Jake's friend group consists mainly of high-earning professionals. Many of the women in this circle have purchased homes and drive luxury vehicles. During gatherings, conversations often revolve around investments, property values, and career advancements. Jake began making subtle comparisons between my income and his friends' financial achievements. Last week, Jake asked me to come over for an important conversation. He waited until after dinner, when we were sitting on his balcony overlooking the city. His expression was serious, his posture rigid. He stated that our relationship wasn't working for him anymore. When I asked why, he listed several grievances that seemed manufactured rather than genuine. Then came the statement that cut deepest. He said he wanted someone more ambitious, that he couldn't see himself with a woman whose goal was to be a housewife. Water spilled from my eyes before I could stop it. The term housewife carried such venom in his delivery. It negated everything I am, my education, my work ethic, my independence. It reduced my life choices to a stereotype he suddenly found repulsive. Jake backtracked immediately upon seeing my reaction. He tried to explain that he didn't mean it that way, that he respected my choices. But the contempt in his voice when he spoke those words revealed his true feelings. The past 2 years flashed before me, all the times I rearranged my schedule to accommodate his work travel, the meals prepared, the support offered. I remembered how, despite his frequent absences, I never complained. How I encouraged his career ambitions and celebrated his successes. I gathered my belongings and left his apartment. The walk to the train station never felt longer. Questions swirled in my mind. Was this about money? Was he comparing me to the high-earning women in his social circle? Or was there something fundamentally incompatible about our visions for the future? Jake has called and texted repeatedly since that night. His messages express regret and confusion. He claims he didn't mean what he said, that he was stressed from work and took it out on me. Today, I'm trying to understand what happened. Was I naive to believe a man would value my approach to life and relationships? In our city, are traditional values considered a liability rather than an asset? And perhaps most importantly, how do we spend 2 years together without realizing this fundamental incompatibility? I'd appreciate any insights or similar experiences. Right now, I'm questioning everything about my choices and future plans. Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone who responded to my post. Your comments helped me gain perspective during an incredibly difficult time. Many of you suggested that Jake's behavior indicated deeper issues beyond our different life goals. After reading through your responses, I decided to have one final conversation with Jake to better understand what happened. I waited until last weekend to meet with Jake. I suggested a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop near the harbor. The week following our argument, he had sent numerous text messages apologizing and asking to talk. I needed time to process my thoughts before engaging with him again. When we met, Jake looked different. The confident posture was gone, replaced by slumped shoulders and tired eyes. He immediately launched into apologies, saying he'd been reflecting on his behavior and regretted his words. I listened quietly, noting how his apology focused more on his feelings than on understanding mine. I asked Jake a question that had been weighing on me: what exactly attracted him to me in the first place? His answer revealed much about our misalignment. He spoke about how refreshing it was to meet someone uncomplicated after dating ambitious women whose schedules rarely aligned with his. He appreciated coming home to a clean apartment and home-cooked meals. He liked that I was available when he wanted company. As Jake spoke, I realized he had valued what I provided rather than who I was. My traditional approach had appealed to him as a convenience, not as a value system he respected. He wanted the benefits of my choices without truly honoring the philosophy behind them. I then asked about his previous relationships. This had been a topic we'd touched on briefly early in our relationship, but Jake had always been vague. This time, I pressed for details. His longest relationship before me had been 8 months with a corporate attorney. When I asked why it ended, Jake shrugged and said, "She worked too many hours." Further questioning revealed a pattern. Jake consistently sought women whose careers demanded significant time and energy, then became dissatisfied when those demands affected their availability to him. The conversation shifted to our intimate life. With some hesitation, I directly asked what he had meant by wanting me to take more initiative. His example stunned me. What Jake described wasn't initiative, it was dominance. He wanted me to take complete control in our physical relationship, something entirely opposite to my nature and preferences. When I pointed out this contradiction, Jake became defensive, claiming he'd dropped hints about his preferences. I reviewed our 2 years together, searching for these supposed hints. There had been none. This revelation explained the disconnect in our physical relationship. We had fundamentally different preferences that Jake had never clearly communicated. As our conversation continued, another troubling pattern emerged. I asked Jake about specific instances when he had made sacrifices or accommodations for me. He struggled to provide examples beyond basic relationship courtesies like attending my cousin's wedding or buying birthday gifts. In contrast, I had regularly adjusted my schedule around his work travel, maintained his living space, and supported his career ambitions. I brought up his comments about my career choices. Jake claimed his friend's successes had made him question our compatibility. He admitted feeling embarrassed when his colleagues' partners talked about their professional achievements while I discussed freelance projects. This confession confirmed my suspicions. Jake valued status over substance. The coffee shop began to fill with afternoon customers. Our conversation had lasted nearly 3 hours. I felt a strange calmness replace the hurt that had consumed me for weeks. The person sitting across from me wasn't the man I thought I knew. He was someone who wanted the comfort of traditional values without respecting the philosophy behind them, who desired a successful partner for status rather than compatibility. I told Jake I wouldn't be continuing our relationship. His expression showed genuine surprise, as though he'd expected our conversation to end differently. He asked if there was anything he could do to change my mind. I explained that our fundamental values and expectations were misaligned, and pretending otherwise would only lead to further pain. Walking away from the coffee shop, I experienced a mixture of relief and sadness. 2 years is a significant investment of time and emotion. Yet the relationship had revealed important truths about myself and what I require in a partner, someone who values my choices for what they represent, not just for how they benefit him. The past week has been focused on rebuilding. I contacted friends I had somewhat neglected during my relationship with Jake. Their support has been invaluable. I also reconnected with my brother, who lives across the country. Our video calls have become a welcome part of my evening routine. Jake continues to send messages, alternating between accepting my decision and trying to convince me to reconsider. I've maintained minimal contact, responding only to practical matters like returning items left at each other's places. This experience has reinforced rather than diminished my commitment to my values and life goals. I still believe in building a family-centered life. However, I now understand the importance of finding a partner who genuinely shares these values rather than merely appreciating their benefits. Update 2. It's been 6 weeks since Jake and I ended our relationship. The initial shock has faded, replaced by clarity I didn't expect to gain so quickly. Many of you asked for an update, so here it is. 3 weeks ago, Jake asked to meet one last time to return some of my belongings. I agreed, suggesting a public park near my apartment. When we met, Jake appeared to have lost weight and seemed more composed than during our coffee shop conversation. He handed me a small box containing books and a few personal items I'd left at his place. The conversation that followed revealed new dimensions to our relationship issues. Jake admitted that his friends had influenced his perspective more than he'd initially acknowledged. Specifically, his colleague Thomas had repeatedly commented on Jake settling down with a housewife while still in his prime earning years. These comments, coupled with social gatherings where partners' careers became status symbols, had created doubts in Jake's mind about our compatibility. Jake also confessed something that confirmed my suspicions about our intimacy problems. He had been viewing inappropriate material online that portrayed dynamics completely contrary to our actual relationship. This had warped his expectations and contributed to his inability to connect physically in a meaningful way. When I asked why he hadn't discussed this earlier, he claimed embarrassment and fear of judgment. What struck me most during this conversation was Jake's continued lack of self-awareness. Even while admitting these issues, he framed them as external problems rather than aspects of himself that needed addressing. There was no recognition that his values might be misaligned, only that circumstances had led to unfortunate outcomes. I shared some final thoughts with Jake before parting ways. I explained that relationships require more than affection and attraction, they need aligned values and mutual respect. His response was telling. He asked if we could try again once he had figured things out. This request demonstrated that he still didn't understand the fundamental nature of our incompatibility. The week following this meeting brought unexpected developments. Jake's friend Melissa contacted me. We had always gotten along well during group gatherings, though we weren't close. She asked to meet for lunch, explaining she had insights that might help me process what happened. Melissa revealed that Jake had exhibited similar patterns in previous relationships. His relationship with the corporate attorney hadn't ended because of her schedule, as he claimed. According to Melissa, Jake had pressured her to reduce her work hours and consider less demanding career options. When she refused, the relationship deteriorated. This information validated my suspicions about Jake's true attitudes toward women's career choices. Even more revealing was Melissa's observation about Jake's family dynamics. His mother had been a high-powered executive who was rarely present during his childhood. His father had managed the household while maintaining a part-time professional practice. Jake had often expressed admiration for his father's abilities but harbored complicated feelings about his mother's absence. This background shed light on Jake's contradictory desires. He claimed to want an ambitious partner while simultaneously resenting the demands such ambition would place on their relationship. Melissa also mentioned that several friends in their circle had noticed Jake's tendency to compare partners to each other and to idealized standards. This pattern of comparison had affected his ability to appreciate relationships for what they were rather than measuring them against external benchmarks. This conversation with Melissa provided valuable context for understanding what had happened between Jake and me. It wasn't simply about career choices or life goals, it was about Jake's unresolved issues and contradictory expectations. The past few weeks have brought positive changes to my life. I joined a community garden project in my neighborhood, something I'd been interested in but never pursued while with Jake. The physical work of planting and tending crops has been therapeutic, and the community aspect has introduced me to neighbors I might otherwise never have met. I also reconnected with a former colleague who had started a small content creation agency. We discussed potential collaboration that would allow me to increase my income while maintaining the flexibility I value. This opportunity has reminded me that my career choices aren't about lacking ambition, they're about creating balance that aligns with my priorities. Jake sent one final message last week, stating he was beginning therapy to address his commitment issues. While I wish him well, I recognize this as closure rather than an opening for reconciliation. Some relationships, despite good intentions, cannot overcome fundamental incompatibilities. Update 3, it's been nearly 5 months since my relationship with Jake ended. The passage of time has brought perspective I couldn't have imagined during those first painful weeks. 2 months ago, I made a significant decision. The lease on my apartment was ending, and rather than renewing, I chose to relocate to Portland, Maine. This move had been something I'd considered for years but had put aside while with Jake, whose career was firmly anchored in Boston. Portland offers the community feel I've always wanted while providing ample opportunities for my freelance work. Housing costs are considerably lower, allowing me to rent a small house with a yard instead of an apartment. The pace is slower, and the connection to nature more immediate. The collaboration with my former colleague developed into a steady partnership. I now handle content creation for several of her clients, resulting in more stable income without sacrificing flexibility. Working remotely allows me to maintain this arrangement despite the relocation. Jake reached out when he learned about my move through mutual friends. His message expressed surprise and what seemed like genuine regret. He mentioned his therapy was revealing patterns in his relationships and helping him understand his contradictory expectations. I responded briefly, wishing him well in his journey of self-discovery. Melissa has remained in contact, occasionally visiting Portland for weekend trips. During her last visit, she mentioned that Jake had started dating someone new, an investment banker whose schedule is even more demanding than his. This information no longer affects me emotionally. Instead, it confirms that Jake continues to seek relationships that reinforce his unresolved patterns. The Community Garden Project in Boston inspired me to join a similar initiative in Portland. Through this, I met Nathan, 34M, a high school science teacher who shares many of my values regarding family and community. Our friendship has developed naturally over shared activities and conversations. Unlike my experience with Jake, there's no pressure to conform to external expectations or status measurements. My brother visited last month, his first trip to Maine. While hiking along the coast, I shared the full story of my relationship with Jake. My brother pointed out something I hadn't fully acknowledged. Throughout the relationship, I had gradually diminished parts of myself to accommodate Jake's preferences and schedule. The Sarah who moved to Portland is more authentic and confident than the person I was in that relationship. The community I've built here includes people with diverse life choices and career paths. Some are professionally ambitious, others prioritize family or creative pursuits. This environment has reinforced my belief that measuring worth by career achievements or income creates false hierarchies that diminish the full spectrum of human contribution. Looking back at my original post, I recognize the questions I was asking were based on faulty premises. The issue wasn't whether traditional values are viable in modern relationships. The real question was whether I was with someone who genuinely respected my choices rather than merely benefiting from them. I no longer worry about finding a partner who shares my vision for family life. Instead, I focus on building the life I want and connecting with people whose values naturally align with mine. This approach has brought more authentic relationships into my life than anxiously trying to prove my worth to someone with fundamentally different priorities. The experience with Jake taught me to recognize when someone's words and actions don't align. Jake claimed to value independence and ambition in women, yet he resented the natural consequences of those traits in his partners. He appreciated the benefits of my more traditional approach without respecting the values behind it. This contradiction created an unwinnable situation where no choice I made would have satisfied his conflicting expectations. My path forward doesn't involve abandoning my values or adopting different ones. Instead, it's about finding environments and relationships where those values can flourish without constant justification. Portland has provided that space, allowing me to pursue my vision of success without measuring it against external standards that never truly resonated with me. The house I'm renting has a small sunroom that I've converted into a workspace. Each morning, I watch the sunrise while planning my day. This simple routine represents everything I've gained since leaving that relationship: space to breathe, freedom to choose, and the quiet confidence that comes from living authentically. For those still following my story who might be questioning their own relationship dynamics, look for partners whose actions consistently match their stated values. Compatibility isn't about finding someone who checks specific boxes, it's about shared fundamental beliefs about what matters in life. No relationship is worth diminishing your authentic self or constantly justifying your legitimate choices.